Okay, well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Today we are going to talk about the shift from darkness to light, and all that entails, and all the challenges that entails. Entails quite a few challenges, and I'm not sure we have thoroughly thought about all the multifaceted challenges that it presents. You know, it is becoming increasingly challenging to use the world's platforms through technology to spread the gospel message. With the implementation of AI, artificial intelligence, video teachings and podcasts are actually ingested by AI, and some are rejected by AI through censorship. You see, AI is just what it stands for. It's artificial. It is artificial intelligence. It doesn't have a brain of its own. It only has the brains it feeds on and builds on, like a parasite. That understanding that it builds on is actually our intelligence and uniqueness that it feeds on and it absorbs. And it builds that information base into a global hive mind. AI can be used for good and for evil, but the evil will override the good in the end of days. AI has ready access to profiles on each one of us. We are probably saved like a node on a computer board. It absorbs more and more and more about each one of us. So this is a challenge we are faced with. We are using these technological platforms, but we never should forget that our platform is the strongest of all and the wisest of all. Our platform is the rock. So the shift from darkness to light. In Genesis 1:4, we read, "And Elohim saw the light, that it was good, and Elohim separated the light from the darkness." Spiritually overcoming and separating from darkness is a process that does not take place overnight. I think we've all seen that, have we not? It is a transitional shift of our soul to align with His Spirit within us. Daily, we are refined in this sanctification process. This process detoxes us from the impurities we have consumed from this fallen world. We begin to shift away from unholy alliances, the traditions of men, doctrines of leaven, meaning doctrines of mixed lies with truths, and worldly addictions as the darkness in our souls begin to shift to light. This shift is very delicate at times. It's touchy. And we must remember the shifting to His light is a process. And we're all at different points on this process. He desires for His people to be set apart, to be overcomers, for that is why He wrote the 7 letters to the 7 assemblies in the book of Revelation. The present assemblies that are all around us have a challenge. And so do we, that for a season, think about this, for a season, we have been shown His truths that pretty much have shown us how far we as believers have drifted. Sadly, these revelations were tough conversations to have with our families, with our friends, and with the church. Both sides at times would become defensive. right or wrong paradigm. Both sides had legitimate reasons as to why they stood where they stood. We must remember, we come to him just as we are. We come to him like little children, do we not? And just as we learned in the Fragmented Soul series, these parts of us, these parts of the fragmented church, these parts of the fragmented assemblies, we must understand they come to him, and most of them know him as Jesus and God as God. We have to understand that assemblies all around us are ministering and spreading the gospel message, and their doors are wide open. Come in. But they come in just as they are. And they come in with all the baggage that they had out in the world. And it is a process. It is a process to love them into truth. But at the same time, we need that truth to be well embedded in the assemblies. So over time, we can transition them to deeper truths. They come with the holidays of the world. And these things cannot be changed overnight. Do we expect local assemblies and churches just to kick them out? Well, you can't do that. No. We have to use his word to lead them to all truth with love and compassion. On the other hand, for those of us that have been revealed deeper truths, we have been equipped over several years. This has taken us several years. We've understood these revelations, and hopefully we can use those understandings that can reveal those truths to others. Help them understand too. Now, we might think, well, Libby, that's a big job. That's a big job. I mean, we're talking about all these assemblies and all this stuff. And yeah, it is a big job. But also today, we live in times of huge corporate mergers, and there's no reason that we as a body can't help the church platforms and other believers understand deeper truths. But we have to do these things in his timing. And we have to do these things with love and compassion and be guided by his Ruach HaKodesh. Because remember, he came to seek and to save that which is lost. He said the well do not need a physician, it's the sick that need a physician. Are we not his witnesses? I believe we are. And we've reached a stage where even now, the church even needs some evangelism, but humbly share truth, because his truth is sharper than any two-edged sword. So if you go in there and start chopping away, that's just going to lead to division. His word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. When we say yes to Yahushua's blood ratified new covenant proposal sealed with his precious blood, when we choose to remove our sandals of authority in which we once walked in this fallen world, when we choose to mikvah, be cleansed, be baptized by our high priest Jesus, when we partake in his Melchizedek covenant confirming meal of bread and wine, and when he declares that he has made us his kingdom of priests from every tongue, tribe, people, and nation, then his light pierces the darkness, and we are never the same. And we just start that journey. And his word becomes a lamp unto our feet, a light unto our path. No matter when we start, He is the light that leads and guides us. Observing Passover with him blesses us, and it blesses him. Passover is a very intimate and solemn time with our Savior. Passover begins the cycle of a 7 feast, and these feasts are our wedding rehearsals. But sadly, we didn't start there, did we? When we sought to find Jesus and he was seeking to find us, we went into a local assembly and they didn't really observe Passover. They observed Easter. They observed Good Friday, Palm Sunday. These things were what we were exposed to. And these things we were more familiar with even in our unsaved state. That was something that we had slightly in common. And yet, that does not follow the truth in his word. But at the same time, assemblies can simultaneously educate their congregants to his 7 feasts and let those that are ready to learn more and have reached that level of understanding of the basic foundations of his word move closer to him. Because isn't that our journey? Isn't that what our journey is all about, is every day moving closer to him? We don't want to be stumbling blocks. Passover, we know, spiritually moves us from darkness to light. When we recognize and remember this pivotal moment in time when he chose to lay down his life for us and take it back up again, then our journey begins from darkness to light. Now, in the local assemblies, they may just say, come to the foot of the cross and give your life to Jesus. That's a very remedial understanding of Passover, being washed by the blood of the Lamb, understanding that he laid down his life for us and chose to take it back up again, to pay for our penalty on the tree. In Revelation 21:23-24, we read, and the city had no need of the sun nor of the moon to shine in it, for the esteem of Elohim lightened it, and the Lamb is its lamp. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the sovereigns of the earth bring their esteem into it. This world, however, has a bent toward darkness. This world deceives, distracts, and divides. For everything of Yahweh, the devil has established a counterfeit. That is why it is so very important for believers to simply question why they do the things they do. And also to offer grace to those that haven't seen or understood why they do the things they do. We need to learn to ask ourselves, what is wrong with this picture? Am I doing things God's way or worldly ways? All a person has to do is think about it this way. Follow this similar game that we all grew up with. What is wrong with this picture? Okay, so by asking ourselves, what is wrong with this picture? His people will start to recognize what are man's traditional holidays and which ones are Yahweh's feast. Most cultures recognize traditional national holidays with days off from school and work. Therefore, most families observe such accordingly. I mean, they have the time off during those seasons, and so do their children. By design, this world has made it very difficult, but not impossible, to go against the massive promotion and hype of holidays. Remember, being set apart is a process. This is not the first time a generation has drifted away from Yahweh and practiced things not of his making. He just desires for us to take steps toward overcoming. Without solid knowledge of his word, we drift and shift into the dark side of this world. We drift to this world that is seen before our very eyes and not to his world that is unseen. We are distracted. In Isaiah chapter 5, we read, "Therefore my people have gone into exile because they have no knowledge, and their esteemed men are starved, and their crowd dried up with thirst." We are hungering and thirsting for righteousness, are we not? Therefore, Sheol has made itself wide and opened its mouth without law. Their splendor and their crowd and their uproar, and he who is exulting within her shall go down into it. And man is bowed down, and mortal man humbled, and the eyes of the proud are humbled. But Yahweh of hosts is exalted in judgment, and the set apart El is set apart in righteousness, and the lambs shall feed in their pasture, and strangers shall eat in the waste places of the fat ones. Woe to those who draw crookedness with cords of falsehood and sin as with wagon ropes, who were saying, "Let him hurry, let him hasten his work, so that we see it. And let the counsel of the set apart one of Israel draw near and come, so that we know." Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Woe to the mighty to drink wine and brave men to mix strong drink, who declare right the wrong for a bribe, and the righteousness of the righteous they turn aside from him. See how everything is so backwards? Therefore, as a tongue of fire devours the stubble and the flame consumes the chaff, their root is as rottenness, and their blossom goes up like dust, because they have rejected the Torah of Yahweh of hosts and despised the word of the set apart one of Israel. In Luke 23:34, and Yahusha said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." There's a lot of people around us that do not know what they do. If they do not know, then maybe that's why we're here, to help show them in love and compassion the narrow path that leads to life. In Hosea chapter 4, verse 12, we read, "My people ask from their wood, and their staff declares to them. For a spirit of whorings has led them astray." See, those are spirits, right? We battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and rulers of darkness and spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. For a spirit of whorings has led them astray, and they went whoring from under their Elohim. They slaughter on the mountaintops and burn incense on the hills under oak and poplars and terebinth, because its shade is good. Therefore, your daughters commit whoring, and your brides commit adultery. Hosea chapter 4:6, my people have perished for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I reject you from being priest for me. Since you have forgotten the Torah of your Elohim, I also forget your children. But he is awakening his people to the truth. He is awakening us to the covenant that we have partaken with him, the new covenant. And he has revealed to us that he did all of that to make us his kingdom of priests from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. And he has also given us the Great Commission to go and make disciples, teaching them. Isn't it interesting that in the religion of Judaism, they observe Yahweh's feast that foretold of Yahushua's first coming and his impending second coming, but most did not recognize him or receive him. Isn't that so interesting? Yet many believers that do receive Yahushua, that fought and struggled to find his feast days, it took us a long time to even find his feast days. But many believers that do receive Jesus do not practice Yah's feast. They're not even aware that they are their feast. They're not even aware that those feasts are their wedding rehearsals. They have been deceived into observing the holidays that are the traditions of men that are connected to little g gods. Why? Because due to deception, they know not what they do. They have been made to believe God's feast belonged to the Jews and not to them. And I will explain later why so many believe that. With Yahushua's first coming, the synagogue of Satan had not only incorporated the powers of the Roman authorities to act against Yahushua, but also incited the masses. The enemy wanted chaos. They wanted civil unrest. They wanted a feeding frenzy to crucify Yahushua, Jesus. And this holds true even to this day. And we are speaking of the Jesus of Nazareth. At the time that Pilate asked the masses who they wanted released, Jesus or Barabbas, they chose Barabbas. Like today, they called evil good and good evil. Did we hear what I just said? They called evil good and good evil. And mankind are the very ones Jesus came to seek and to save. The very ones at that time who had observed Jesus's triumphal entry were now witnesses or even participants in the crowds saying, crucify him, kill him, shed his blood, get rid of him. Sadly, in the end of days, there will be deceived believers that will turn on Yah's believers that follow his covenant commands and believe, they will honestly believe they are doing good and not evil. Yahushua knew the people that in his day, he knew the people had drank the Kool-Aid. So in his mercy, he asked the Father to forgive them, for they knew not what they did. His word is all about his feast and connection to his people. So this is a great place to start with revealing truths. If we miss this understanding, we miss him in all his appointed times to meet very intimately with us. He doesn't share his worship and glory with little g gods, but he does understand when people do things that they really don't understand what they do. They know not what they do. In Isaiah 42:6, it says, I, Yahweh, have called you in righteousness, and I strengthen your hand and guard you and give you for a covenant to a people, for a light to the nations, to open blind eyes, to bring out prisoners from the prison, those who sit in darkness from the prison house. I am Yahweh, that is my name, and my esteem I do not give to another, nor praise to idols. So I made this chart to give an excellent overview of what transpired from the call of Abraham to the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. I'll briefly go over this. But we know in Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3, Abraham received the promise. And we know in Genesis 14, after the battle of the kings, Melchizedek blesses Abraham, and they partake of bread and wine. And then in Genesis 15 was when Abraham requested a guarantee for the promise, the unconditional promise that Yahweh had given Abraham in Genesis 12. There wasn't really any need for a guarantee, but Abraham asked for it, and Yahweh gave it to him. But that meant with the flaying of the animals, that blood covenant promise, guaranteed promise, would require if someone broke the covenant, then someone would have to die. And Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, always knew he was going to be the one to lay down his life and take it back up again. So Moses comes along and he eventually leads the people out of Egypt to Mount Sinai. And they are proposed to. It was their marriage covenant proposal at the time of Pentecost. And that was the book of the covenant, the marriage ketubah. And that takes place in Exodus 19:5 through 24:11. But it wasn't 40 days and boom, the golden calf, the sin of the golden calf, pagan worship of in worldly ways. That's what they resorted to. That's what they were grown up with because they were in captivity in Egypt, and that's what was embedded into them. And they fell back to the familiar spirits, did they not? And because of that, 3,000 died. But before then, his people were led by preachers of righteousness, the Melchizedek priesthood, the righteous lineage that started at the very beginning that would lead to Yahushua and to the tribe of Judah. After the sin of the golden calf, he was ready to wipe them all out. Moses interceded and he spared their very lives, except for 3,000 that took direct participation with the sin of the golden calf, who had directly committed adultery, because now they were no longer under the book of the covenant. They were under the book of the law. And this book of the law would be implemented by a different priesthood. The Aaronic Levitical priesthood would be established from the tribe of Levi to implement the imposed book of the law until the time of Yahushua HaMashiach. And the book of the law runs from Exodus 24:12 all the way through Deuteronomy and into the beginning chapters of Joshua. And this book of the law they would be under, that was full of blessings and curses until Yahushua would come. And since the Aaronic Levitical priesthood would be implementing this, since now they would be a kingdom with a priest and not a kingdom of priests, plural, the Melchizedek priesthood was still there, but it existed in a denigrated position. I mean, it took Moses, if you recall, that was still among the preachers of righteousness. It took Moses. He was the one that had to cleanse Aaron and his sons because they had defiled themselves with the golden calf. He had to, the acting high priest has to wash the incoming high priest. So that was a shift. And the next shift would not take place until Yahusha would come, until Yahusha would be mikvahed by John the Immerser, and Yahusha would once again elevate the Melchizedek priesthood back to its reigning position. The tribe of Levi would also be part of this because they are one of the tribes, are they not? But we are all washed by the blood of the Lamb. We are all his firstborn. Our name is Israel, and we come from every tongue, tribe, people, and nation. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. So Yahusha laid down his life to fulfill this blood covenant of Genesis 15 so that we could be connected back to the promise. And he ascended on the 40th day. And 10 days later, he sent the Comforter on the day of Pentecost. And behold, 3,000 were saved on that day. 3,000 died with the sin of the golden calf. And now he is seated at the right hand of the Father. So what happened with the priesthood after the sin of the golden calf? What happened with the priesthoods after the death, ascension, and resurrection of Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah? Both of these occurrences brought on a shift in law and a shift in priesthood. These shifts were based on Hebrews chapter 11 through 21. So we see that the original covenant at Mount Sinai was a blood ratified covenant. It was blood ratified in Exodus chapter 24, but it consisted of a proposal, acceptance, blood ratification, and covenant confirming meal. Likewise, the new covenant consists of all four elements as well: proposal, acceptance, blood ratification, covenant confirming meal. But when there's a change in priesthood comes a change in law. So anytime we're looking at his word, we have to determine what priesthood and what law is reigning to really fully understand what we're reading and why what we're reading follows certain laws and commands. Now we are under covenant Torah and not the book of the law. Not that we throw the book of the law out. No, we learned so much from the book of the law. It was all pointing to who Yahusha was. And Yahusha fulfilled the book of the law. He was the only one that could fill the book of the law. In Hebrews 7:11 through 21, we read, "Truly then, if perfection were through the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people were given the Torah, why was there still need for another priest to arise according to the order of Melchizedek, and not be called according to the order of Aaron? For the priesthood being changed of necessity, there takes place a change in law also." And it's even footnoted from Melchizedek to Aaron. That's what happened between Moses and Aaron. And then between John the Immerser and Yahusha, it flipped from the Aaronic Levitical priesthood back to the Melchizedek. It's footnoted there. There's no confusion. Verse 13, "For he of whom this is said belongs to another tribe, from which no one had attended at the slaughter place. For it is perfectly clear that our master arose from Judah, a tribe about which Moses never spoke of concerning priesthood. And this is clearer still. If another priest arises in the likeness of Melchizedek, who has become, not according to the Torah of fleshly command, but according to the power of an endless life. For he does witness, Yahweh does witness, you are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek," in Psalm 110, verse 4. "For there is indeed a setting aside of the former command, the book of the law, that was placed outside the ark of the covenant. The covenant commands were placed inside the ark, thus the ark of the covenant. But the Levitical commands, the book of the law, were placed in a pocket outside the Ark of the Covenant as a witness against them. So in verse 18, for there is indeed a setting aside of the former command because of its weakness and unprofitableness. For the Torah perfected not. The book of the law, which is identified here, Levitical Torah, the book of the law perfected not, but the bringing in of a better expectation through which we draw near to Elohim. And it was not without an oath. This was the oath. For they indeed became priests without an oath, but he became priest with an oath by him who said to him, Yahweh has sworn and shall not regret. You are a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So how did things get so messed up? Well, because of lack of knowledge and the adoption of worldly Babylonian ways, being actually brought up in captivity, in slavery. You know, Yahushua was confronted by and faced the Babylonian ways just as we do today. But today we face mystery Babylon. The synagogue of Satan still promotes their Babylonian Talmud that was devised and expanded upon in their Babylonian captivity. However, there has always been a remnant of people, of Yah's people, that he uses to turn the tide back to him. The enemy will come as sheep in wolf's clothing, saying, believe us. No, we know better. We believe his word. His word is truth, and his Ruach HaKodesh, his Holy Spirit, will lead us to all truth. Each of us as individuals must work out their own salvation with fear and trembling. Now, make no mistake, I know, and you know, that many of the assemblies have been infiltrated with tares, right? The wheat and the tares grow side by side. And even those that have moved into greater truths of his word, we have also been infiltrated. So that is why we always have to take what we hear, see, and do back to his word to see if it matches up with what he says. So what is wrong with this picture? What list are you going by? It is never too late to unlearn the devil's deceptions. But we have to be patient with how these things are unlearned because they are heavily embedded into this world in which we live, into our families, into our friends, and we have to guide them with love and compassion, but at the same time, we cannot compromise. Not everyone at the same time will spot all aspects of what is wrong with this picture. They may be believers in Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, but most have been raised in our present day Babylon to believe lies of the enemy. For this reason, many may find it difficult to process this, to get their head wrapped around this, to comprehend it. Much like with the wheat and tares, the enemy sowed not only deceptions among Yahweh's people, but also planted spies, tares, double agents, if you will, to promote the deceptions and delusions of truth. These tares were purposefully planted next to the wheat, next to his truth in all aspects of our lives, not only in the church setting. That's why it becomes even more complex. The enemy's goal is to take the masses away from Yahweh's truth. One major way this was achieved was by promoting pagan holidays to worship instead of Yahweh's holidays. Therefore, we must recognize what is wrong with this picture and shift back from the practice of traditional holidays and start observing his feast days the best we can, little by little. The Sabbath is a blessing for families. It is a blessing for friends. It's a blessing for individuals. And we wonder, well, gosh, Libby, where do we start to begin the shift back to obedience to Yah and not blend with Mystery Babylon? Well, Make no mistake, this fallen world has made sure, they have made sure that this is very difficult by promoting the customs of the world and essentially shadow banning the things of Yah. But a great place to start is where we all started, most of us, with the Sabbath, and also with Passover, shifting to Passover instead of Easter. Observe each Sabbath the best a person can. That's a starting place. There is a reason why this world packs Saturday schedules with sports, parties, and other events. The prince of the power of the air wants to divert Yah's worship to himself. Naaman struggled with such when he made a request to Elisha in 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 17 through 19. So this isn't something new either. Sometimes it's a struggle. Sometimes it's a struggle. 2 Kings 5:17. Naaman said, and he's speaking to Elisha, if not, please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth, for no longer is your servant going to make an ascending offering and slaughtering to other mighty ones, but to Yahweh. So Yahweh grant forgiveness to your servant in this matter. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and when he leans on my hand and I bow down in the house of Rimmon, when I bow down in the house of Rimmon, Yahweh, please grant forgiveness to your servant in this matter. And he said to him, go in peace. Several believers have taken steps to better follow Yahusha, as did his first disciples. Most are in small local groups, or we participate in these Zoom gatherings. Many fellowships should be willing to make gradual changes, but we must understand this has to be a gradual change. I mean, each week they may be introducing new people from worldly ways, walking in to their congregations. And these people worship pagan holidays. And it will be a process to move them from that darkness to his light. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. Now, local churches do have some things going for them, most certainly. And the local churches don't have everything wrong. We have to see that. Because local churches are more organized for local fellowship, they're more organized for Bible study and for worship. For this reason, many families rely on such local churches not only for worship and fellowship, but as a place for their children to learn the Bible basics and make friends as well, have social interaction. But with guidance, even if it's in a church setting, or if it's at school that they go to, when you come back into your house, fellowship with your family, ask them what they learned today or what they saw that was interesting. You know, play the game. Well, what is maybe wrong with that picture? Maybe that is an area that we can shine more light on. Because the wheat and the tares grow side by side in numerous forms. And they're going to be exposed to all these kinds of things, and we need to help them build up their discernment radar, because they're going to be exposed to this. We can't shelter them from all these things. But if they have a firm foundation and can understand, oh, well, that person's new to the church, they don't understand that. That's why they, for now, they don't understand the difference between Easter and Passover. And you have to start where there's common ground and then build from that point. Some families utilize materials that promote the shift back to doing Bible things Bible ways. A great resource for such materials to not only aid children in learning about Yahweh's truths, but also for adults in churches to learn and implement the basics of his feast days is BiblePathwaysAdventures.com. And I'll leave the link in the description section below. But this is great. You know, I even went there and learned many things as an adult because they break it down into simple language. And honestly, when you're coming into his feast and you haven't been raised in his feast, this is exactly what we need, adults and children alike. And it's fun. So these are some of the materials that they put out. I mean, they have a wealth of materials discussing the 12 tribes of Israel, the 10 plagues of Egypt. It talks about the fall feast. It talks about the spring feast. And there's comments from people that have used the materials. Lisa from the United States rated an activity book. She quoted, "Kept my kids engaged and in their Bibles during kids' church." Doug from the US wrote, "Children enjoy it and they were occupied while I focused on whatever else he was focusing on." But the devil is after the children, and they have many resources to reach them. They're probably holding those resources in their hands right now. So some local church fellowships may have a Sabbath gathering as well. Some do not. If not, those people attending such an assembly could have a set apart time at their own home. And this would serve as a starting place to shift back to honoring the Sabbath. You know, it may be for a few hours on the Sabbath for a start. You know, we don't know their family situations. We don't know their previous commitments already on Saturdays. It's a process. The Sabbath serves as a valuable time to fellowship with Yah and have quality time with family members or with a small group of friends. So anytime you gather with your family and friends, use it as a time for people to ask questions. Were there things that they learned that they liked or things that they didn't understand? Were there topics discussed from the world's perspective versus how, or were they discussed from how Yahusha wants us to view such topics? Wherever we go, there will be a mixture of viewpoints. The goal is for all of us to develop strong discernment by filtering what we hear, see, and do to be in alignment with his word. There are some things, however, that must be removed from the radar of all believers. I mean, this is just how it is. There's some things that are simply, they got to go. And that something is the man-made holiday of Halloween. Anton LaVey, founder of the Church of Satan, wrote, "I'm glad that Christian parents let their children worship the devil at least one night out of the year." He knows who is being worshiped on Halloween, and that's just totally not acceptable. Halloween must go in all aspects and must be rid of in all its shapes and forms. There should be no substitutions made, such as church trick or treat or trick and trunks. If local fellowships refuse and continue to celebrate a modified version of Halloween, it would be best not to attend. We must keep in mind making the transitional shift back to doing Bible things Bible ways takes time. Our goal is to humbly reveal his truth based on his word and not ours. These are just some suggestions to get people and families started on the road that leads to Yahweh's feast days and how he desires to be worshiped. Remember, Yahusha, Jesus of Nazareth, didn't come to condemn the world. He came to save the world. He doesn't expect perfection. He desires to see steps of faith moving in the right direction. When he walked on this earth, Things were a mess as they are today. He knows the challenges we face being scattered among the 7 continents and island nations. The main thing is for individuals, families, and assemblies to start somewhere. Take one of Yah's feasts and dedicate time with him. Why? Because that is where Yahweh began when he led his people out of Egypt. They too were inundated with the practices of the nation people for several hundred years. And a lot of these man-made holidays were magnified since the late 18th century. And now you see where they have taken off to. So what is wrong with this picture? Well, we see Easter overlaid Passover, and we see Christmas overlaid tabernacles. But these that you see on the screen, in addition to the Sabbath, these are Yahweh's 7 feast days. So why are observing his feast days so important? Because they are his appointed times with his bride. You see, these are our wedding rehearsals. And what bride and what groom would not show up for their rehearsal? Yahweh moves and acts on his feast days. His second coming, and this usually perks up most people's ears, his second coming will happen on his appointed feast. That is why he wants us to know and understand each feast and what it represents. For these are the times we must watch and pray. Stay alert. Some may ask, but aren't these Jewish feast days? Yes and no. Though often referred to as the Feast of the Jews, mainly in the 4 Gospels, this phrase was used to distinguish between the feast of the southern tribes of Judah, dubbed quote unquote the Jews, that had returned from Babylon to Jerusalem. So this was focused on the southern house of Judah. And they would call those feasts the Feast of the Jews to differentiate them from the Roman celebrations, the Roman holidays. God's feasts have always been his appointed times, our wedding rehearsals with our groom. They are his people's feast, all of those that have come and received him. This quote by Justo Gonzalez said, "The church must be one because a fragmented church is not much help to a fragmented world." And just like individuals can have fragmented souls, the church is fragmented as well. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But we just don't ignore it. We just don't wash our hands of it. His commission was to go and make disciples, teaching them. They've been taught the ways of the world. Now they need to be taught the ways of Yah. Question is, does the church, the ecclesiast, the corporate body of believers, do they want to be healed? You know, some congregations may not want to change. We've always done it this way, and that's how it's going to be. Goodbye, slam the door in your face. Hey, shake the dust off your feet. I mean, an attempt was made. Can the breach between believers that have been shown truths be mutually respectful with other believers that have not awakened to these truths, and vice versa? The enemy is the one who sowed seeds of misinformation into the church to divide and weaken its members so they would believe lies. Like the Israelites out of Egypt, we were born into slavery. And most of us only knew the cultural holidays we were raised celebrating. The current worldly holidays practiced slithered in strongly over the last couple of hundred years. So where does one begin to shift back to truth? shift back to doing Bible things, Bible ways, shift to light and not darkness. We start by observing the Sabbath the best we can. And another great starting place is the Passover of unleavened bread. Under the conditions of Egyptian slavery, were the people able to serve anyone else except Pharaoh? No. Being slaves, they lived under division, deception, and distractions. They were so busy building, all they had time to do was be a slave and maybe eat, go to sleep, and start their day again. Like with the people out of Egypt, our generations have been born in Mystery Babylon, Egyptian slavery, if you will. Most of us were born and raised with these traditional holidays of men and not the Feast of Yah. We too have been inundated with division, deception, and distraction. So what was Yahweh's reason for the exodus out of Egypt? In Exodus chapter 7, verse 16, we read, "Let my people go so that they serve me in the wilderness." That they serve me in the wilderness. And that is defined as to serve, to do the service, to worship, and worship him the way he desired to be worshiped. I mean, they observed Passover before he led them out of Egypt. He was already teaching them his ways. So under the conditions of Egyptian slavery, were the people able to serve anyone else except Pharaoh? No. Being slaves, they lived under division, deception, and distractions, and they had lost the ways of Yahweh. This is a clip I wanted to show you from Jennifer Bagnashi with Deep Believer. Let's see.
What I'm about to share is very important. The Lord told me to look out for the triple D's. I've only shared this with our prayer team early last month and a few close friends and family, but I'm sharing it with you now. The Lord said to be aware of the triple D's. I was walking around my house and the Lord just said to me, unprovoked, he said, be aware of the triple D's. So I said, Lord, what are the triple D's? He says division, deception, and distraction. I'm going to say that again. The triple D's are division, deception, and distraction. He said the enemy will try to seep all of these into the church to dismantle the church. We have to be aware. We have to use discernment. Look out for these. So I asked the Lord, I ask questions. I said, how long will this be for? And he said, for here on out. So for now on, be aware of the triple D's, division, deception, and distraction.
Yeah, pretty much like the enemy of our enemies is our friend, right? Like with the people out of Egypt, our generations have been born in this mystery Babylon, Egyptian slavery. Most of us were born and raised with these traditions. And so we too have been inundated with division, deception, and distractions. The first mention of serve was in Genesis 15, when Abraham asked for a guaranteed promise to the unconditional promise of Genesis 12. And that required the flaying of the animals to ratify Yah's promise by blood. And if that was broken, it would require someone to die. And we know that it was Yahusha, the flaming torch in the burning oven, that passed through the pieces. So in this process of making the covenant, Abraham was also allowed to see Yahusha's day. And that's recorded in chapter John 8:56. Your father Abraham was glad that he should see my day, and he saw it. And he did rejoice. And in Genesis 15, verse 13 through 14, we read, and he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve, I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. The calling and promise to Abraham revealed Yah's plan to save his people I mean, this whole thing was a huge process from Genesis to Revelation. It takes time to get us out of this slavery, all that Yahweh did for us. You see, the impending slavery of Yahweh's people was already known to Yah, and Yahweh made it known to Abraham. Abraham wouldn't even live to see the level of slavery alluded to in Genesis 15. So these biblical shifts, they take time. This shift would be of great magnitude and require miraculous signs and wonders that would and could only be done by and through Yahweh. Not only that, Yahweh knew we would all be deeply ensnared once more and find it very difficult to serve Yahweh as he desired us to serve him. As with the first Exodus, the people were taken out of Egypt, but it took a while for Egypt to be taken out of them. Yet once more in Isaiah chapter 11, we read of a greater exodus in our day that will also require Yahweh's intervention. But we must participate and do all that we can to guard and keep his covenant commands of grace and mercy. We live in a day when actually evangelism needs to be taking place in the assemblies. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 11 through 12, and Moses said to Elohim, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" I mean, isn't that what we're all pretty much called to do? To help bring the children of Israel out of Mystery Babylon, out of Egypt? Or are we not called to do that? Or was that just left up to Moses? We are now his kingdom of priests, plural. And in verse 12, it says, "And he said, because I am with you, and this is to you the sign that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you are to serve Elohim on this mountain, on this very mountain." We know Yahweh is described as a consuming fire. The only ones that can stand before the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob without being consumed are his set apart ones. The covenant power comes through Israel, born from above, existing of the natural branches and the grafted in branches, but they all have been washed by the blood of the Lamb. You must be washed by the blood of the Lamb. No one can come to the Father except through the Son. And not just anyone can dwell in the secret place of the Most High, because he is a consuming fire. To be in his presence, you have to be washed. That's why in Obadiah chapter 118, it says, "In the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, but the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall burn among them, and they shall consume them, so that no survivor is left of the house of Esau, for Yahweh has spoken." We learned last week that the wheat and tares will grow side by side until the reapers are sent out to gather, bind, and burn the tares, then gather the wheat into Yahweh's barn. We also learned last week that it is at times very difficult to tell the difference between wheat and tares. Identity becomes more exact at the time of the harvest, for the tares stand tall in defiance and the wheat bow down. We've learned that. We know that. Today, we learn that the wheat should not be bowing down to the traditions of our surrounding nations, but to Yahweh's commandments and feast. To avoid the 3 Ds of division, deception, and distraction, we must exercise discernment at all times. We must ask ourselves, what is wrong with this picture? And encourage our children to do the same. Why? Because it takes a while to sort through the cloak of lies and deceit that are blended with his truth and disguised by the sheep's lingo. I mean, there's some good imposters out there, and their clothing. However, Yah does reveal truth to his elect, and we are to attempt to avoid division with love. Matthew 24:24, "For false messiahs and false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones." The birth of Esau and Jacob This is the same battle back in that day that we face today. And this is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham brought forth Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah as wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padam Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean. And Isaac prayed to Yahweh for his wife because she was barren. And Yahweh answered his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. And within her, the children struggled together. And she said, if all is right, why am I this way? So she went to ask Yahweh. And Yahweh said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. And one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older serve the younger. However, we see in Genesis 27, verse 40 and 41, speaking of Esau, and by your sword you are to live and serve your brother. And it shall be when you grow restless that you break his yoke from your neck. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father draw near. Then I am going to kill my brother Jacob. That anger exists to this day. In these end of days, Esau, whose name is synonymous with Edomites, will for a season get the upper hand on Jacob, Israel, born from above. We see that in verse 40 of Genesis 27. We read it. And it shall be when you grow restless that you break his yoke from your neck. And this is during the time of the Great Tribulation. We see we presently exist in a digital prison of technology, tracking, and surveillance. Esau is closing in. Esau Edomites, or those of the world that have not received Yahushua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah, but they most certainly can. They just have to receive Yahushua as their Savior and be washed by the blood of the Lamb. Jacob, Israel, represents those born again by the blood of Yahushua, Jesus of Nazareth, from every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. So this is a diagram of Babylon darkness on one side here, and the light of biblical Zion, not to be confused with Zionism of today, biblical like Mount Zion. And we are all born of water at the beginning, born from our mothers, but we must be spiritually reborn to become part of his kingdom and make the shift from darkness to light. But many get caught in the middle transition, and some bring the ways of the Nicolaitans into the Melchizedek priesthood, which should not be. Remember, Yahushua is our high priest after the order of Melchizedek. So here we have the Nicolaitan system, and this is a lukewarm zone. This is like having 1 foot in the world and 1 foot in the kingdom. And this is a very dangerous place to be, because the beast man is rising. And see, the devil has counterfeited the one new man rising. See, it looks similar. It has some of the similar metals in it. And this was the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, but these are worldly kingdoms, and this is his heavenly kingdom. So the beast man rising is of the world, and the one new man rising is of the order of Melchizedek, of every tongue, tribe, people, and nation. And the Nicolaitan system, they put people in positions to lord over the congregants. I mean, one of the best examples to envision this is like the popery that lords itself over Catholicism and its members. I'm not saying Catholics are I'm not saying all Catholics are not born of Yahusha, but they are in somewhat of a precarious position being in such a Nicolaitan structure. So the Nicolaitan structure elevates man to these positions, whereas his kingdom of priests, we function with our gifts. You know, we have people that pastor congregations or teach congregations, but it's more connected to their function rather than their position. But this is the shift. And this is the very dangerous area right here in the middle. I mean, so many people still have one foot in the world. And by following his feast days, they'll be drawn closer to him and out of the world and into his arms. The world Beastman Rising is artificial intelligence. And that is evolving to a point that we cannot even comprehend. It will drastically change the way people function. It will drastically replace the skills, the beauty, the creativity of mankind. Mankind will be more of a servant to this hive-minded system of AI, because the devil wants to be the all-knowing one, does he not? And this is his approach. Artificial intelligence versus Yahweh's word, because it is Yahweh that is all-knowing. As smart as AI might be, and it can write code, it can do anything. As smart as it seems to be, it is not all-knowing like Yahweh. It is not. And we read in Revelation before, I mean, the people are going to wonder, oh, who is like the beast? Look at him, or look at her, who knows? They're going to be amazed, and they're going to be very much deceived. So this is the danger zone, to be in the position of lukewarmness. And our goal is to shift and teach Bible things and practice those things in Bible ways and help lift the deception, help lift the division off of his people. Because we have brothers and sisters in the traditional church settings. We do. We do. And there must be a reason, right? That Yahweh had us focus on all of these truths. And how will we build up the body if we do not share these truths in a loving, humbling way with our brothers and sisters that lead to life? At the time of the end, we read about it in Daniel 12. Now at that time, Michael shall stand up, the great head who is standing over the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of distress, such as never has since there was a nation, such as never was since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people shall be delivered, every one who is found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth wake up, some to everlasting life, and some to reproaches, everlasting abhorrence. And those who have insight shall shine like the brightness of the expanse. And those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Didn't we read that Israel is a fire and Joseph is a flame? Are we not Israel? Are we not Joseph? But you, Daniel, hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall diligently search, and knowledge shall increase. Ooh, yes. Oh my. Yeah, there's a lot of knowledge out there going to and fro. So the shift from darkness to his light. We read about in Ephesians chapter 5 that all matters being convicted are manifested by the light. For whatever is manifested is light. That is why he says, wake up, you who sleep, and arise from the dead, and Messiah shall shine on you. See then that you walk exactly, not as unwise, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are wicked. So then do not be foolish, but understand what the desire of Yahweh is. And do not be drunk with wine in which is loose behavior, but be filled with the Spirit, speaking to each other in psalms and songs of praise and spiritual songs, singing and striking the strings in your heart to the Master, giving thanks always for all to Elohim the Father. In the name of our Master Yahushua Messiah, subjecting yourselves to each other in the fear of Elohim. So always move toward the light of his word and leave the world behind. For we are his royal ambassadors. Therefore, we represent him on earth. And we are now the ones that should help brothers and sisters to come out of Mystery Babylon so that we all may serve him. Shabbat Shalom.